I wish to convey our sincerest gratitude to all of you for your presence. We are all really very grateful to see you here in this regional webinar on localization, which is actually part of our tangible response to the suggestions and recommendations that we made during our regional conferences and partners forum way back in 2019 and 2020. We have originally planned to hold this event in person, but because of obvious reasons, we are now holding it online. And I do hope that you don't mind that we are recording this webinar so that we can upload it in Baobab and in all other social media accounts for anyone who wishes to view it later on. So today we will have a variety of speakers and presenters from our Caritas family in Asia, particularly from our Caritas member organizations in Bangladesh, in Cambodia, India, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, Philippines, and Thailand. We will also have presentations from our global partners, including CRS, CAFOD, and Caritas Internationalis. But of course, apart from our presenters and speakers, we will also have all of you who are the very heart of this event. We encourage you to also share your thoughts and comments, particularly during question and answer portions of each of our presenters, but always mindful of the allocated time. So please be brief in case you have some questions or comments after each presentation. So now let us begin this webinar by listening to the opening words of our beloved regional president, Dr. Benedict Alo de Rosario, whom you know very well because he has been with Caritas for more than 30 years now, as first the former director of Caritas Bangladesh for a very long time, and now as our regional president in Caritas. Being a current member of the governing board of Caritas Internationalis, including the executive board and the representative council of Caritas Internationalis, and various other committees and working groups of CI, Dr. Alo has been representing our region to many international meetings and decision-making processes of our global confederation. So it is really fitting that we will first hear about local leadership from our very own president, who has been a leader himself for a long time now at various levels of our confederation. So now I give the floor to you, Dr. Alo. Please let us give him a virtual applause. Dr. Alo, if you're there, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I am pleased to welcome you all to the Asia Regional Webinar on Localization today. We are expecting around 60 participants joining us from 25 Caritas member organizations around Asia, Caritas Internationalis, Caritas Global Partners, and other Caritas family worldwide. This webinar today is designed as a continuation of the previous two Asia Regional Workshop held on October 2019 and January 2020. To hear different experiences and perspective on promotion of local leadership, partnership, and risk management from our distinguished speakers and moderator of each session. Leadership development is the ongoing focus of Caritas Asia, and it is captured rightly in the new 2022 to 2025 Caritas Asia Strategic Plan. Most Caritas Asia members countries are situated in disaster-prone areas, and the majority of the leadership team possess huge amount of capacity and experiences in humanitarian responses. They are the captains of frontline, quick, and life-saving responses. And such human resource competency is eligible to be acknowledged and incorporated into the global definition of capacity. Caritas Confederation's partnership guiding principle put high importance on the authentic relationship among partners in rendering its services to the most disadvantaged and suffering community and people. The guidelines are rooted in the values of empowerment, local ownership, respect, equality, and mutuality, and at the same time frames the behavior of healthy partnership. Caritas Asia members have good and long-standing partnership experiences with Caritas and non-Caritas organizations, which can be explored deeper in this webinar. One important highlight in the grand bargain is the risk sharing through which better humanitarian outcomes can be delivered effectively and efficiently to the affected population. Caritas member organizations in Asia have accumulated wisdom to cope up with different risk factors in their implementation of the emergency responses. They are either under the dictatorship, authoritarian regime, semi-democratic or democratic government, but possess the robust institutional mechanism to manage risk. Trust, long-term relationship, and flexibility are key determinants in successful risk management, and reflection in this webinar will enhance our understanding on partnership and risk management. Today's regional webinar is organized as part of the Confederation Localization Roadmap, where all the 7 regions of Caritas Internationalis hold its respective regional dialogues, and the result of which will be collected and voiced in the upcoming Grand Bargain annual meeting this June, means 2022. Considering the wealth of experiences of Caritas member organization in the region, it is obviously impossible to capture everything in such a short time. Thus, we strongly encourage you to use this opportunity to learn and to inspire one another and to continue this discussion in your own national and diocesan Caritas offices. Please join me in thanking Dr. Richard Wintunki, Asia Region Focal Point for Localization and Subguiding, Caritas Asia Regional Secretariat, and Floriana Politu and Howard Mollet of CI Humanitarian Policy Task Force for their tireless efforts and wonderful collaboration in making this webinar possible. Moreover, our gratitude goes to the speakers and moderators who have been working hard to ensure engaging and informative sessions. We also would like to thank His Excellency Bishop Enrique Figueredo, the President of Caritas Cambodia, for providing us the needful guidance to value and understand our service beyond the technical jargon. Lastly, I wish you all a fruitful webinar and discussion. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opening words, Dr. Alo. You have indeed set the tone for this webinar, and we are all very eager now to listen to the other speakers, particularly on leadership. We also take note that local leadership is deeply embedded in the new regional strategic plan of Caritas Asia. So now we are very honored to have here with us no less than our Secretary General, Mr. Aloysius Chan. We are really grateful that he is here with us today because, as you know, he is usually loaded with so many meetings at CI. But today he has particularly allocated time for him to be here and to join us here in this webinar. So this is indeed an honor for us, Aloysius. And I join Dr. Alo in thanking you, and on behalf of our regional family in Asia, We really thank you for your presence. Let us all then listen to our beloved Secretary General, Mr. Aloysius Chan, who will give us some words of wisdom from our Caritas Confederation. So Aloysius, if you're there, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zah, and good morning and good evening and good afternoon to all of you. It's indeed a pleasure for me. And when you have COVID, it also gives you the possibility to participate in a more relaxed way in this meeting. And I thank you for this opportunity. I would just like to share a few thoughts, and I think Dr. Alo has set the tone very clearly. I think this is an important initiative to reflect on what localization means for Caritas. We have lots of reflections, lots of documentations, but what is important today for us is to see what localization means for us as Caritas Network. One of the strongest points for Caritas is its capillary presence in the society and its capacity to motivate and mobilize communities, both at the humanitarian level and also public opinion. So this is something which I think we need to nurture, and we need to voice it out very clearly and loudly. In the future, in the localization agenda, there will be need for more professional attitude and also capacities, which is in a highly competitive humanitarian environment. And I think Caritas needs to be prepared for that. And this kind of seminars are very important. Today, we already started to reflect on this issue with the ACT Alliance, and also within SCHR, there are certain reflections going on to see what could be the contribution of the faith-based organizations and what is specific to the faith-based organizations. Because when you talk about localization, at the end of the day, we're also talking about the principle of subsidiarity. And Church has been doing it, and Caritas has been doing it for ages. But how do we put this into value, and how do we take this on board in the localization agenda is something very important for us. And with ACT Alliance, we are reflecting on the faith-based approach to localization. And there is going to be a conference which we're working upon. I met them 2 weeks back, and we will be working on that. And the localization also goes in what Pope Francis said, think future and dream the future. I think this is what you're precisely doing, thinking of the future, how to prepare ourselves. I would just like to conclude with three questions or points for which I would like to hear from this meeting also. What specific meaning this concept or idea of localization has for Caritas? I think that's something very important. What is specific to us, and what message we can get across to the global humanitarian community as faith-based organization? Secondly, how is it going to also influence fraternal cooperation? Dr. Alo has put it there. Fraternal cooperation, where as Asian Caritas, you have to sell your capacities, and as funding Caritas, how do we get into an alliance? How do we get into a partnership? And I think that is something which we need to reflect today. And to what extent are we ready to accept each other mutually is something which I think we need to reflect. And this is where what leadership for us, and how do we respect and nurture this leadership? The last point for me will be the role of the regions in this, because the regions will be certainly playing a very capital role in coordinating the wisdom and the experiences in the region. And how are you going to do this in order to get the regional perspective at the global level, so that we have 7 regional approaches, and which we can bring as a confederation contribution to the international community as our contribution as faith-based organization to nurture and also to feed into the localization agenda. I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm very eager to listen to what are the reflections, especially Monsignor Kike's presentation on the theological dimension. I'm very much interested in listening to this, and I wish you a nice meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you
over
very
to you,
much.
Zah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aloysius, and thank you indeed for your words of wisdom from the Secretary General himself. Thank you for your presence. We take note of your 3 questions, and I'm sure these 3 questions will somehow be answered in this webinar. Although, of course, we take note too that these questions are currently being answered by our member organizations, our 25 member organizations in Asia, because their works are very much deeply rooted into your questions. So now let us proceed to the next part of our webinar, and this time I will give the floor to Dr. Richard Winton Chi, who is currently Caritas Asia's regional focal person on localization and safeguarding. Many of you, if not all, also know Dr. Richard very well because prior to his engagement as our regional focal person on localization, he was also the National Director of Caritas Myanmar, or KMSS, and now he will be giving us a general overview of the localization agenda of our Caritas Confederation, as well as our Caritas family in Asia. So over to you, Dr. Richard, and let us all give him also a virtual applause. Dr. Richard, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, friends from Caritas Internationalis, and also Global Caritas Partners and Caritas Asia. When you look at Caritas Asia, I think we have 25 members altogether. Out of the 25, 20 are implementing Caritas, where we are reaching out to around 2.4 and 2.5 billion people in the Asia region. So we have a huge presence in this regard. And after all, after the Red Cross and Red Crescent, Caritas Asia is one of the biggest regional structures in Asia region. In terms of capacity and our wisdom, I think Dr. Alos already mentioned, so I don't want to repeat it again, but I want to bring that connection to the grand bargain localization commitment. As you all know, I think global leaders of the humanitarian actors have boldly acknowledged and empowered the frontline humanitarian local responders through their localization commitment in 2016. That political engagement and acknowledgement really see the important roles of the local actors in reaching out to the vulnerable people around the world. In this regard, I think Caritas Asia is well positioned to really enjoy and really implement this localization commitment because we have a critical national as well as the regional actors which can avail the commitment to the betterment of the people in the Asia region. I just would like to give you one sort of the understanding of how important it is. In the grand bargain localization, there are so many commitments that there is one commitment which says that 25% of the humanitarian funding must reach directly to the local actors. Who are they? They are the 20 implementing Caritas Asia member organization. My question is our Caritas Asia 20 member organization implementing in Asia region and with their friends, local and national NGOs, do we benefit from this commitment? Do we receive that 25% direct funding directly coming from donor to us without no intermediary? According to the recent grand bargain appraisal, it is not reached. If not, how do we ask our rights to the global leaders that it is not reaching to us that 25% directly? And if not, how do we individually and collectively advocate to achieve those commitments? So this webinar is one of the opportunities for the global human decision makers offer us that the local frontline responders or 20 plus Caritas member organizations are capable. We are already experienced. We are already reaching out to the people. There are many more commitments that we need to understand and enjoy according to the localization agenda. If we can ride along with this global trend, Caritas Asia member organization will definitely reach to more people with more resources, and then they can manage with much capabilities to reach out to more people. This not only benefit to the people in the Asia region, our collective presence and effort can also contribute to the global shift through our affiliation with the Caritas Internationalis and other regions, as Aloysius John mentioned. So this is not only stopped in Caritas Asia region, it will be affecting through the global arena, through the coordination and leadership and fraternal cooperation of Caritas Internationalis. This webinar intends to lay the foundation on which Caritas Asia members organization will guide by its Caritas Asia regional strategy plan. We will really grab the opportunity to better serve the people in the Asia region. We have to tell the world that how local leadership in Caritas Asia MOs are capable. We have to tell them that how do we manage our partnerships and how do we mitigate risks in reaching out to the people. According to the CI localization paper, localization is in the DNA of the Caritas families. as Arise just mentioned, subsidiarity is already there. How do we implement and how do we let the global humanitarian arena and actors know that we are already practicing? We now have to synergize these core values of Caritas with the global humanitarian community, and localization is a new paradigm shift in humanitarian arena in which Caritas Asia, together with the Caritas Internationalis in other regions, we will be a strong influencer for this change. Thank you. Over to you, Zai.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Thank you very much, particularly for sharing us the plans of our region, particularly on localization, and how we can all take part in sharing our experiences and initiatives on local leadership. So now to continue, let us also welcome Mr. Howard Mollett from CAFOD, because as you know, Howard has been very helpful, not just to our region, but also to all the other 6 regions of TI, particularly on localization. In fact, he has helped us in planning for this webinar. And if you recall, he did the same for us when we had our regional localization forum in Yangon 2 years ago. He continues to be part of our think tank on localization, and he has been a really, really great help and really great resource person on this initiative. So we are very grateful forward. I call on to you now to share with us a little bit more about Grand Bargain and to give us an overview of this Grand Bargain. Howard, over to you, please.
Thank you. I just want to also extend my thanks to Ari, Dr. Richard, and the rest of the team working at the regional level in Asia who've done such an amazing job preparing with all the different contributors for today and thinking about this not just as a one-off webinar, but as a part of a process that has deliberate follow-up, hopefully, and can result in change to both lift up the good practices and the innovative things that are happening, as well as to try and address some of the challenges or barriers that there might be to supporting better subsidiarity, sort of really realizing principles like fraternal cooperation, solidarity and partnership and so on. So just 4 quick points from the global ground bargain process that might be relevant for you today and in the Asia region. Very quickly. One is that the localization discussion started in the humanitarian sector, but there is a recognition that is relevant not just for humanitarian, but for development, governance, peace building, and all the signatories of the ground bargain, this process that started this localization discussion. They are all now working on how to build, how to reflect critically and constructively in their longer term development work on this as well. So for both in CAFOD, this is true. For our donor government, the UK government, FCDO, are talking about locally led development. So there is this recognition that if you wait for an emergency to happen and think about partnership, local leadership, it's going to possibly be too late. You need to work on that in the longer term work, and it's important to do that in and of itself. Second point is that in the global discussion on localization, there's now a conversation about how to hold what are called intermediary agencies accountable for their approach to partnership and local leadership. And by intermediary agencies, that could be a UN agency, an international NGO like CAFOD, CRS, Caritas Denmark, or any of the Caritas, or even fundraising donor partners in Asia as well. But it could also be larger national organizations. So many Caritas national organizations do channel money onto local structures. So actually, the Caritas national organizations can be intermediary organizations as well. And so we expect proposals to emerge from this discussion at the global level in the coming months. And we can react and respond and reflect on that and think which of these are relevant to us in Caritas. How do we hold ourselves accountable, and how do we hold the donor or the fund, those that channel funds to local actors, accountable? But some of the ideas include things like overhead costs. How can a donor expect a local organization to work sustainably or effectively if it's only covering the basic project, a water digging of a well, but it's not supporting the core running costs of the local organization to have the good financial system, the safeguarding system, and other things in place. Or due diligence. In different agencies that channel funding to local organizations have all these very complicated, inconsistent, very heavy top-down approaches to due diligence. And Aloysius mentioned the collaboration between ACT and Caritas, and on due diligence, this is one of the things where CAFOD and Christian Aid in the UK, which is the ACT Alliance member in our context, we're looking at how to harmonize and align and simplify our due diligence processes and possibly have due diligence passporting. So if a partner has been screened by Christian Aid, they can quickly access funding from CAFOD or vice versa, and that we reduce the bureaucracy on the local partner organizations. You know, maybe this could be another aspect of how intermediaries get better at partnership. Third, two-way mutual accountability. To state it very simply, there is a power dynamic. There are donors that have funding, donor governments like USAID, EU, British government, and so on. There are international agencies that hold the direct relationship with the donor. And then there are local organizations that are some steps away. And this creates a power dynamic whereby it's then challenging for the local organization to raise their voice or raise critical reflections on the quality of the partnership. But we and other agencies involved in this localization reflection want to shift beyond this and find creative, meaningful ways for dialogue, a mutual two-way dialogue on quality of partnership. What would that look like at the country level for Caritas partners? And last, there's this recognition about if we want to empower local leadership, we need to find better ways to support national or local level consortiums or platforms or funding instruments where local organizations can take the leadership role, or at least a co-leadership role. And so what would that look like? And I know that in some Asian contexts like Bangladesh or Myanmar and elsewhere, the Caritas national organizations have been a part of trying to support collaboration with other NGOs to manage funding and funding instruments at that level where they take the lead. So I'll leave it there. But thank you again, and looking forward to learning from you all today.
Thank you very much, Howard. And indeed, our Caritas Asia family is very grateful for all the help you have been generously providing us, particularly in the field of localization. And we do look forward as well to continue the collaboration with you and CAFOD. So to continue, it is an honor for me to introduce to you our next speaker, who is none other than the president of Caritas Cambodia and one of the pillars, not just of the church in Cambodia, but also in the Church of Asia, and especially so of our Caritas family in Asia. His Excellency Bishop Enrique Figueredo, whom we fondly call as Bishop Pique. He is a beloved true leader of Asia who never fails to lead us towards Christ and provides us his own complete ways of how to be a Christian leader. And so for this webinar, he will inspire us to look into the spirituality of localization and give us some insights on the importance of the participation of the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed. He will share with us his theological reflections on localization and inspire us all the more in our works as Caritas organizations in Asia and beyond Asia. So let us give him our virtual applause and listen to what he will share with us. Over to you, Bishop Pique.
Thanks very much, sir. Thanks. So, happy Easter to everyone, and I hope that the next 10 minutes will be useful to everyone. Thanks very much, Aloysius, for being here to give us encouragement, and Dr. Aloy for guiding us so well. I am really with encouragement to participate all the time, thanks to your leadership. And also here, Dr. Richard, Ari, sir, thanks very much for organizing us to be here together. My sharing will not be so much in that we have to be professional, but we have to go deep into the gospel. And maybe for sharing the screen, can somebody help me? Ari, can you put the presentation in the screen? Or somebody who has the
Yes,
presentation?
it's already there, Bishop.
It's
We're
already
ready.
It's already because I in my screen I cannot see yet. I can see the Grand Bargain of Caritas Philippines.
It's the wrong one, Ari. It's the wrong one, Ari. Not the Bishop one. You're putting Caritas Bangladesh one. Caritas Philippine one. Jane will speak after Bishop Kike.
Yes, thanks very much. So what I am focusing is in the how to go deeper and empower the local leadership, and I will use well, the gospel, of course, who give us the strength and also the teaching of our Pope and of two nice scholars that we have working with us. So the first thing is that Jesus gave us to ourselves to give something to the people to eat, to live. We can pass to the second one. So in the letter of the joy of the gospel, the Pope reminds us that solidarity is not a little thing, it's not a game. And we have to put it in the looking at the gospel, the aspects of mercy and loving loving the everyone. And this solidarity is the creation of a new perspective, And I think this is what is going to help us to think when we think in localization is a new perspective that may be in the mind of the people who thinks in development, in the mind of everyone, but it's a new perspective that we have to take from the eyes of Jesus, from the gospel, and to give life to everybody and to have full life, no? So we pass to the second one and to the second slide, please. And this, I am going to use from Father David Hollenbach, his principles in claims in conflict, and also a thought from Sister Denise, who is the director of Jesuit Refugee Service in Cambodia. So the first thing, maybe the next slide, sorry, is that the needs of the poor take priority over the wants of the rich. The needs of the poor takes priority over the wants of the rich. And this is very important for us to know that the needs are calling us more than the wants of the people who are handling the means. And this is very important for our way of working. Jesus, I take here the gospel of the poor widow who give her contribution to the church, to the temple, from what she needs, no? And her needs are, challenged by the needs of building solidarity. And the rich are giving just what is wealth. So here we have to take the eyes of Jesus to see how Jesus look at the poor. He look at the poor from their perspective, ask us to have a new eyes, and ask us to look from the bottom. Look from the bottom. If we think in localization, we have to think from the bottom. The bottom means that the perspective, thinking, and loving and serving the poor is what takes priority over the rationality, over the thoughts, over the will of the people who got the means. And this is very important principle that I think Father Hollenbach is giving to us, that we see in the mind of Jesus, looking at the widow. Next slide, please. The second statement will be that the freedom of the dominated over the liberty of the powerful. Jesus is calling us again to have a new perspective in leadership. We know the leadership of the world is very different from our the leadership that we want for the church. No, the leadership as Jesus himself, he recognized that the rulers of the world are thinking more in power, in domination, and in political games. And I think today, very clear, we can see all these things in the last war that we have in Europe, but in all the wars that are going on, that the rulers are accusing the people, no? And us, we cannot follow these examples. We have to come to be servants, to be helping, to be loving, to be caring. And this is very important for us when we have programs, when we have make a new planning, that we have to be in the perspective of service, loving, and caring. And Jesus is telling us very clear that our Caritas, our network of Caritas, is to give freedom to the dominated over the liberty of the powerful. Yes, the next slide. And this is very important for me, and I think it's very important for the whole Caritas network, Caritas family. The participation of the marginalized groups over the preservation of an order that excludes them. Here I'm taking the gospel of the Good Samaritan, because it's helping us to see the perspective that Jesus is using for us to change our perspective and to change things and to look at the reality with a new way. And very, very important for me to see two things in this gospel that tell us about the way that God is looking at us. This Good Samaritan, he saw, he took pity, he went on him, he went to heal the wounds, and he used all his means, and he took care of him, all in solidarity, and at the end, in networking. And I think here we got a very important way for us to think, if we are talking about localization, how to get out of the way, and how to get out to feel pity, and with kindness and tenderness to heal the wounds, and to make the people who are injured to share the donkey, to go together, and to go together in solidarity and networking with others. For me here, there are 3 points that are very important to talk in the participation of the marginalized groups. That here I have to say, marginalized groups can be the people that we are serving, but also can be the Caritas that they have less voices than others, or they have not so many people well prepared like others, but their participation is very important, and the order has to change if we want to be in fraternal cooperation. So for me, three things important. The movement of kindness and tenderness is very important, to look things not only with ideas, but with a big heart, loving heart of caring. And the second is to go together, It's very important that we go together, we share the way. We had many times in Caritas these words, these sentences of going together, we share the way. But the third is in working with others in solidarity. Yes, very important. So the participation of the marginalized groups is very important for the localization. And also, for the last thing, if we think in the people that we are helping, people with disabilities, minority groups, refugees, people who have no status, stateless people in the world, their participation in our local Caritas, very important, very important. We have to give them voice. We have to give them the space that will help us to do the localization of our projects, of our work, and not so much that the projects and the perspective is coming from the politics or the policy of the great or the big donors, but has to come from the bottom, has to come from the marginalized people. Thank you. Maybe the next one. The next one is coming from Sister Denise. And Sister Denise tells us to respect the whole creation over the exploitation for the economical power. I think today, if we want to have a working localization, we have to know that we have the creation that is a big gift to all of us. It's a big gift, and we have to take care of it. But not as something that is outside of us, exterior, and also not something that we have to serve. We don't have to serve the creation. We have to be part of it. We have to be to know that we are part, as Caritas, we are part of the creation, and as our network is part of the creation, and our caring for the rivers, for the forests, for the communities that are living in the natural, I would say, the more natural environment than the cities, is a way that we have to learn. So, like in the Laudato Si, the Pope is telling us, please, we have to live wisely and to think with depth. And I will say here, and for me, my input today will be, we have to read the gospel, we have to reflect the gospel, we have to pray the gospel if we are in Caritas. We have to be, to think deeply, to pray deeply, and to love with generosity, to have a big heart of loving kindness, of tenderness to the poor. Maybe the last one, I want to ask you 4 questions according to the 4 points that I was sharing. That is, with the yes, to rethink our local participation. About the needs of the poor, do we prioritize the well-being of the poor, listening to their needs in friendship? We are friends of them. I think one big criteria for me, if we really knows about the needs of the poor, is how many poor people are our friends. And this would be a good question. Jesus was a friend of the poor. Are we friends of the poor, and we are listening to them, and we prioritize their well-being and being friends of them? The second will be, do we promote active involvement to accompany the involvement of the people who are marginalized in conquering their rights? Yes. We do everything for them. And the participation of them, we give encouragement, inclusion to those who are marginalized from the society, but always with tenderness and kindness. I think tenderness and kindness make the miracle, not the change of structures. I think tenderness and kindness and caring is the secret of Caritas. It's the secret of Caritas. And I think we have to, if we forget, I think we have to read the gospel and we have to pray over. So I encourage you to take these questions to your prayer and to your reflection. And then finally, with the creation that I think is very critical in the whole world, but I think in Asia is very important because many developments are coming without thinking in the creation. We do understand in our projects, in our life, the relationship with the environment as a mutual caring. We care for the environment, but the environment is caring for us. And so our projects, our local programs are in caring for the environment, for the creation. So let me finalize with saying that when I was thinking in what to share, I thought in two ways. One, that we need to have criteria for localization, and the criteria will be given by the gospel, by the heart of Jesus, but by the people that we are serving, by the poor. And there the criteria will be very important. Yes, and our resolutions will be good and will be great if we take these both things, the gospel, the vision of Jesus, and the poor, who are the favorite people of Jesus. Thank you very much, and I hope with this little reflection we can create a new vision or review our way of localization. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop Kike. We are really honored to have you with us, and even more blessed to have been able to listen to your inspiring reflections on localization, particularly on the 4 reflections for questions on how we deal with our marginalized, with the poor, and how we even deal with the environment. So thank you very much for this inspiration, Bishop Kike. So at this point, I will now call on Ms. Chingray Henderson, the Head of Research and Advocacy in Caritas Philippines, who will share with us how the grand bargain, which Howard was earlier mentioning to us, is being contextualized in the Philippines. So over to you, Jing, and thank you very much also for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Kiazar. And on behalf of our National Director, Bishop Jose Colin Bagaforo, and Father Tony Labiao, who's also with us this afternoon, good afternoon from Caritas Philippines. We would like to be sharing with you our experience in the grand bargain here at Caritas Philippines. So since 2013, we have strived to retain the technical expertise and organizational competence we have gained during our Typhoon Haiyan response, which we consider as the most massive, comprehensive, and far-reaching recovery and rehabilitation program to date of the Catholic Church in the Philippines. From there, we were able to focus the integration of our humanitarian development and advocacy programs for our most vulnerable communities in coordination with our 85 diocesan social action centers and in partnership with our numerous stakeholders. So in the Philippines, next slide, please. In the Philippines, our grand bargain experience can be better visualized as seen in the screen. As a matter of institutional practice, we designed our localization agenda around the need to create sustainability within Caritas Philippines, our social action centers, and our communities. Thus, looking at the prevailing needs of our communities especially, Caritas Philippines designed these strategies: resource mobilization, capacity strengthening, and strategic partnership strengthening. In all this, we are always reminded, and as a matter of policy, to cater and put to the center our communities as the focal of all our programs and of every dialogue that we will be doing, especially with our partners. So we think of them every time we look for funding, we consider them when we accompany our dioceses, and we prioritize their needs whenever we develop new or improve existing partnerships with international organizations, national NGOs, community-based CSOs, and national and local government agencies. Through the years, next slide please, through the years of engaging with different stakeholders, and thanks to the support of everyone at the Caritas Confederation, which we really are very thankful, we have gathered a number of learnings. So foremost from our list of challenges is the fact that no matter how good our programs are, if we do not communicate them properly and timely, we will not be able to influence our partners, who are the lobbyists, who are the policymakers, and who have funding to steer them to the direction we want them to take with us. So to gain influence, we needed to strengthen our documentation and our information sharing. We needed to be consistent in presenting who Caritas Philippines is and who we represent, and that's our communities. All through these years, we are still on that road, making sure that we strengthen the grip of our documentation, the grip of our communication. But during the past 8 years since Typhoon Haiyan, one of our biggest achievements is our ability now to command, to take the lead, and to be able to be heard. And in the process, for our communities also to take the center stage, especially in our collective advocacies. In the Philippines and in the Asian region, we are contributing a lot in pushing for community level climate justice, just energy transition, divestment from extractive industries, improved humanitarian responses, safeguarding and protection mainstreaming, capacity building, food security, urban and rural development, good governance, justice, and peace. So as the heart of the Church of the Poor in the Philippines, we at Caritas Philippines continue to work to make our promise of leaving no one behind, especially when we talk about localization. As Cardinal Chito Tagle emphasized when we opened the Caritas Philippines Academy in 2019, as a church, we are mandated to give our best to the poor so that in the process, they are given their rightful space to take over community leadership, realizing the perspective of the grand bargain, which is local needs, local actors, locally initiated, and sustainable development. Good afternoon and thank you very much. Mabuhay po from Caritas Philippines.
Thank you very much, Jing. Thank you indeed for sharing the experiences of Caritas Philippines, particularly on the Grand Bargain. I'm sure the others who are here can also relate with what you have shared because some of them are also doing similar things. And I'm sure others are also inspired by your reflections and sharing because some of them may be doing the same things that you have done in the Philippines. So thank you very much, Jing. So at this point, I will now turn over the floor to our next moderator. We will not have yet our question and answer portion because this will happen after the other speakers will be done in other sessions. But at this time, if you still have some questions, please reserve that for the other sessions. So at this point, I will now call on Ms. Arpana Karti of Caritas Nepal. She will be facilitating the sharing of experiences from our female and male leaders who will share their thoughts on local leadership. So Arpana, I gladly turn over to you the floor. And thank you also for being here.
Thank you, Zar. Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm greetings from Nepal. I'm Arpana Karki, Program Manager for Disaster Management Department at Caritas Nepal, the moderator for this session. In this session, we'll be talking about local leadership, one of the big but very important agenda of Grand Bargain on localization. As we already have shared many experiences from Philippines and other countries on good practices on how we can promote and nurture local leadership, there are many examples such as we've been mentoring and promoting the local partners to participate in the UN cluster meeting as well as on with the humanitarian country teams, promoting local organization to take a lead while a role is as a sub-lead or a technical support while developing proposals, supporting host government capacities to prepare and respond to crisis, including in implementation of the National Disaster Management Guidelines, domestic resource mobilization, both on fundraising as well as in the volunteer mobilization. These are just few examples of how we have been promoting and nurturing local leadership. There are many which you can share in the chat box as well. And to learn more on this subject, we have two speakers today, and their presentation will focus on why we need to promote local leadership and how we can nurture local leadership in Asia. The first speaker for today is Ms. Babita Pinto, the Chief Program Lead with Caritas India. She is a communication specialist with 20 years of experience in the development and humanitarian response sector. Her expertise lies in program and operational management, a specialist in disaster management, team leader for 6 years. She represents Asia region in the Women Empowerment Leadership Committee of Caritas Internationalis. She serves currently as the Chief Program Lead handling the operations of North, West, and Southern Belt of India. And the other speaker for today is Mr. Sher, the national manager from Caritas Kyrgyzstan. He has good experience on development and humanitarian sector as well. He's one of the CIMS assessor of Caritas for Asia region and one of the representatives of Asia region to Caritas Youth. After we are done with the presentation, we'll have an open session for discussion where you can raise your questions or give your reflection. And if not possible, you can even type a question or share your experience in the chat box. Please make sure that you give your name, designation, and name of the organization. With this, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Babita. Over to you, Babita. Thank you.
Good afternoon and good morning to the lovely group that we are addressing. I hope I'm audible as well as visible.
Yes, Babita.
All right, okay. Just let me share the screen and after which we can then begin. Or maybe Ari, could you just help me with the presentation? So once again, hello to everyone, and I'll just quickly run you through the kind of learnings that the Caritas India and the Indian context, especially in the, which also kind of culminates within the Asian context of how we have learned through these local leadership and what is the transformative way that we have eventually begun to evolve. Next slide. So a few of the slides which we will talk about would be the uniqueness that the local leadership that brings to the fore. So one of the important aspects of the local leadership is that there is a sense of purpose, which basically drives the entire leadership. There is a particular cause for which we are working, and this basically involves an understanding of risks and balancing different opinions of community members. That's one. We are led by action. The local leaders have a particular cause that is driving them to make certain commitments, and these commitments are amalgamating into milestones of different achievements that happen on the ground. And this also requires a lot of mobilization from the local context as well as from the community. Next slide. Another uniqueness about the local leadership is the persistence, the ability to keep pushing forward the agenda, no matter whatever be the challenges and the odds. We have seen, especially if you talk about in the Asian context, like in India, we do have a different hostile kind of an environment wherein we have to work, especially being as a faith-based organizations, we do have certain challenges. However, there is this persistence, there is an agenda, a development agenda, a transformative agenda, which actually helps us to keep pursuing the cause that we are working for. And this brings a long-term transformation within the community. And we also see that there is a lot of passion that is driven. And this passion also drives a lot of communities to come together to work towards the commitment that we are engaged with. Next slide. Another slide on the uniqueness would be the ability to bring people together. This definitely creates a lot of platform, a space, and provides the access for people to raise voices, to be able to share and exchange information with each other. And this helps to gain the trust and respect of the communities. Of course, one of the important aspects of leadership is also about providing direction. We have a sense of purpose. We have a sense of a pathway on which we are working, creating more opportunities for development and growth. Next slide. So, what exactly transforms because of this uniqueness? The strength, if we see as part of the Caritas Confederation on the ground, we see that there is a kind of an operational progression which leads to social empowerment. We do see there is a diversity of partnerships. We have a wide spectrum of partnerships. We see a lot of expertise, whether it is sectoral or thematic, but we do see a portfolio which is building on each of these sectors. And of course, as Aloysius also mentioned, that our whole presence to the last mile, our progressive reach, which not only caters to the population, but geographically we are present. That is another important strength that the leadership as well as our confederation brings. Next slide. We also talk about the knowledge. So we do have a lot of knowledge which is there on the ground, indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, knowledge that has diversified over the years, but there is this knowledge capital that has been built up. We have seen a lot of approaches being driven. We have a lot of new innovations and new different orientations to address some of these evolving issues, which again are coming from the ground. And of course, a lot of exercise that happens towards making ourselves more robust when it comes to compliances, systems, and procedures. So these are some of the strengths that I would like to share, one of the leaderships that they provide. Now, moving on a little bit more into the context of how India is working. Ari, can you move on? So the challenge, one, of course, that we feel that in spite of having so much of strengths, in spite of having this spectrum of expertise and services, we still feel there is a lot of fragmentation. There is a lot of knowledge down on the ground, but we do not see a common thread that would actually build up this knowledge right from the local diocesan level to the international fora. The other aspect which we also see is that since risks are now getting so much diversified, we also need to start building our capacities to address these risks. We are not looking anymore to the traditional risks of natural calamities, or we're talking about, you know, those kind of earthquakes and landslides and cyclones that we're looking at. We're looking at different kinds of risks which are now underlying between these major calamities. You talk about health-related risks, you talk about migration and displacement. So these are some of those aspects which are now emerging, and how do we capacitate ourselves and how do we ensure that we have those skills? So that is another challenge that we have. And of course, when it comes to credibility and sustenance of the local stakeholders, when we see that in this environment of diversified risk, how credible and sustaining are the local organizations and stakeholders are, so that they can be more relevant to the ground. So these are, of course, some of the challenges which definitely puts us into thought as to how do we take this initiative forward. So our next slide will be more about the context of the Indian aspect, wherein we would want to share about how we can be relevant within this changing context, and also how we can harness this partnership which we have, Caritas Confederation, as a process of not only harnessing strength, but also being able to gain and exchange information with each other. So that's a two-way process rather than just being a one-sided kind of an intervention. Moving on, Ari. So the two important aspects which I like to sail you through would be how we can basically create that sustenance of local leadership. There is one which is on the strategic orientation, and the other one would be on convergence. So I'll just quickly run you through as to what exactly are we looking at strategic orientation. So within the Indian context, what we understood, Ari, if you can just present this slide because it's a little animated. Yeah, so I'll just, so the Indian context, what we realized is that we had usually kept our focus more on the thematics, the themes that in the sectors that we were working in, and they were very program affiliated or they were time bound, and we would not see any kind of continuum or any kind of sustenance drawn once these programs are over. So what we realized was that we need to look a little differently and focus more on our strategic orientation, as well as the kind of the approaches that we are going to adopt, rather than seeing what are the results that we're achieving. So here in the slide in front of you, what we would like to share is that Caritas India, being inspired from this, the dichonia, which is the social transformation narrative, which is very much ingrained within the church social teachings. From there, we have emanated 4 important strategic pillars. The first one is on the left, if you see, is the empowering animation. The second one is on dialogue. And here we are talking about dialogue with duty bearers, with the nature, as well as with the community. So there are 3 levels of dialogue we're looking at. We're looking at volunteering, and we're looking at sharing community. So this has been our approach, and it has cut across in all our interventions, all our programs, all our alliances, and which has actually resulted in wonderful, beautiful achievements, which we can see much happening on the ground. Ari, next slide. So the first, if you talk about, is the empowerment animation. So here we are talking purely on community-led. This is people-led, community-led, local institution-led, but the idea is to create a cadre of community leaders. Ari, I want to move on to the next slide where I can just share a little bit about how we are focusing ourselves on seeing these kind of local leaders emerging. So whether it is our joint assessments, our programs implementation, we are talking about consortia affiliated structures and mechanisms, working advisory groups, we are coming up with charters and recommendations, a certain kind of agreement guidelines on partnerships of how do we understand each other and how do we mutually learn from each other. And of course, the kind of the percentage of amount that we keep for capacity building. These are some of the evidences which we have culminated on ground under this particular pillar, wherein we have seen a lot of communities coming through and being able to lead the processes. So we have windows created already for leadership representation. That's one. Second one, which talks about the dialogue. So here, as I mentioned to you, we are trying our best within the Indian context to promote more and more local leaders, diocesan as well as at the ground, to see that they are engaged more with nature, engaged with the duty bearers, as well as engaged with the people. So some of the aspects, next slide, Ari. So in some of the aspects, if you see here, we have a working consortia wherein we have representations not only from the diocesan sector, but also we have community and village leaders, as well as some of the youth and sectoral expertise, those who have experiences from the ground coming in together to work on consortias. We have also seen some kind of engagements on policy pursuits. So this is not only happening at the ground level with the local governance, but we see that the learnings are taken on at the regional as well as at the national level. So this is the kind of leadership that we're trying to harness, and of course engage more and more technical partners. We do know that there are definitely partners who are technically sound, but there are also those who are from the ground having much more of knowledge, indigenous knowledge. So we try to bring them on board so that we create that kind of a scope of mutual exchange and learning. The third strategic orientation is our volunteering, which has resulted in a very, very large way, especially during COVID. We have seen a boom of volunteers who came across, and they have not only tried to provide succor to the needy, but they have also tried to make representations in different areas, whether it's child rights or women-related issues, or if you're talking about skill building. We have seen a lot of these people coming forward. So a lot of volunteers that have generated, and they continue to remain much even beyond the program. So this is something which we do see as part of our volunteering. Next slide, Ari. So if you see here, we do have some of the volunteers, most of them youth, and I know that the youth are definitely going to be the face of the future. They're known as Caritas Samaritans, so they have not only supported us with disaster-related interventions, but more so during COVID, they have been a much of a face of the organization. And the fourth strategic orientation, next slide, would be on the resource mobilization. Now, what we do feel that while we understand that the whole process of depending on the West is something which is now dwindling, we have also started creating mechanisms of engaging more and more people so that we are able to mobilize resources locally. So if you talk about one of the examples in the next slide would be the campaigns which Caritas India has initiated within the country. Now, these campaigns are issue-based, and here we have taken cancer as one of the major component here, which has immediately connected with the communities. We have seen a lot of leadership at the diocesan level, at the deanery level, at the parish level, wherein they have instituted those small community institutions, coordinated institutions that are making plans around cancer addressal, on palliative care. They are taking the decisions on prioritizing the issue, and they are also making connections with different medical institutes to ensure that there is some kind of progression and redressal to these patients. So we do see those kind of leadership now gradually emerging, and this has happened with a very, very minuscule amount of support of 300,000 Indian rupees. And with that, we have seen the major kind of an impact which has happened on the ground. So of course, this is another aspect of local leadership that we would like to share in front of you. Next slide, Ari. So moving on, we would also like to, Ari, can you move on to the next slide? I think, is the slide visible or is it halted?
It's visible, I think, but you should summarize your
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah. All right. Okay. So I think just to quickly give you a few takeaways here, one of the important thing that we would like to mention is about convergence. This is something which is very important. And Ari, moving on to the next one, we do see three tier kind of convergence. If you're talking about local, regional, and international, we do see that there is management standards that we have introduced. We have thematic portfolios being built across different confederations or within Caritas, and we have the strategic standards as well. We do feel that there is a need to have this kind of a convergence happening so that there is a similar kind of an understanding and commonality drawn right from the diocesan to the international level. So this is something which we need to exercise in our coming days, because if we for example, the management standards, if you're able to ensure the management standards right up to the diocesan level, then it's much easier for us to see that kind of a trust being built. So these are some of my thoughts here. I, of course, have certain key takeaways, which I'll share with the presentation later on with the House. And I hope, if there are any questions or answers that we can then take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Babita, for your comprehensive presentation. And I think we have a lot of takeaways with us through your presentation. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sher for his presentation. Over to you, Sher.
Thank you, Arpan. Thank you, Babita, for very interesting and informative presentation. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. I'm very glad to see you all. Greetings from Kyrgyzstan. Today I want to share with you our experience of working in Kyrgyzstan, a country in Central Asia where about 1,500 Catholics live and 7 priests serve. Since we have time limitations, I will try to give a brief summary of most important. Caritas Kyrgyzstan is a very young organization, maybe youngest in the Confederation. We have registered and became member of CI only in 2019. Despite this, we managed to achieve some, let's say, success. First, I would like to note that Caritas has full support of the leadership of the church in Kyrgyzstan. Thanks to that fact that our administrator, Father Tony, is interested in development of Caritas, we were able to adopt very important documents, continue the organizational and institutional development of Caritas Kyrgyzstan, and complete the process of external assessment according to CI management standards. In coming 2 years, we are going to improve existing documents or to develop and implement new documents on safeguarding, equality and diversity, financial accountability and transparency. Here I would like to mention that Caritas Internationalis, Caritas Asia and all our partners like CRS, Caritas Japan, Caritas Korea, Caritas Germany, Caritas France, invested and continuing to invest a lot of time and resources to prepare us, to give us knowledge and skills, including on leadership, which allowed us to reach some goals. When we are free from building in the organization, we are also doing some projects. So let's look, have a look on some projects. Mainly we are doing educational projects because we believe that many problems that Kyrgyzstan is currently facing can be solved if young people are given quality education. We try to inspire and help young people from remote villages and poor families to get higher education. Every year we see an increase in the number of young people who want to participate in our projects and get a higher education. These young people become leaders and agents of change for their communities, friends, relatives, so on. We are especially pleased that the number of girls are increasing every year. This means that we managed to convince some parents who previously didn't want their daughters to receive an education. We also use our education project as a tool for young people from different regions, from different ethnic groups and religious groups to meet, to share experience and make friends. Every year we are organizing summer camps for our 100 of young people. So with good leadership, we can implement such good educational programs in which in turn increase the credibility of Caritas Kyrgyzstan, and in turn more donors are committed to support more programs. These projects help to ensure that Church has a positive image in the society, in the face of Caritas, and as an institution that helps people and country. Of course, we are very far from the ideal, so we have also some difficulties and challenges that we face. First one is non-involvement of parishes in the activities of Caritas Kyrgyzstan. From one side, for example, 3 of 7 priests who serve in Kyrgyzstan are somehow involved in our activities. 3 from 7 maybe not so bad number, but so far we have not been very successful in involving parish communities and establish parish Caritas organization here in Kyrgyzstan. So we included involvement of parishes in our activities to our strategic plan. Today in the morning I have participated in a meeting organized by our apostolic administrator with all priests and sisters in Kyrgyzstan. So we talked about how to involve parishes. Also we talked about to involve priests to our safeguarding trainings. So let's hope that soon parishioners, especially young leaders from parishes, will actively participate in the life of Caritas Kyrgyzstan. The second challenge for us is the image of a foreign organization. Kyrgyzstan is a country with a very small number of Catholics, and our president, our executive director are all foreign citizens. And Caritas is as a young organization, maybe we are also fully dependent on external donor financial assistance. So foreign citizens are doing some projects for foreign money, is creating like image of foreign organization. Yeah. So from one side, some people think that we have very, how to say, we have endless financial possibilities that we can give money to everyone who asks for. And some are distrustful, as they think that we have hidden some motives and goals, because they are confident that foreigners wouldn't just help Kyrgyzstan. So to resolve this issue and to convey that we are a local organization and our main goal is to help local people, we try to involve our leaders, church leaders, priests in different activities, different projects, so they can meet with local people to get to know each other better, and these local people can understand, to know about us, about our goals. And the third challenge is laws and geopolitics. In recent years, the attitude of the state towards non-government organization in Kyrgyzstan has been changing for the worst. Some parliament members are initiating tougher laws concerning NGOs. Currently, State Tax Service introduced new extra financial reports for NGOs. So far, these changes haven't negatively affected our activities. However, this trend is alarming and does not give reason to believe that the situation will change for the better. Kyrgyzstan is a country located between Russia and China, and political and financial influence of these two countries on Kyrgyzstan is enormous. Considering recent tragic events in Ukraine and growing tension between East, when I say East, I mean Russia and China, and the West, there are fears that new Iron Curtain will arise, or can arise. In this case, it's not known in which direction Kyrgyzstan will turn out and what consequences this will have for the country and for us. So it's another headache for our leadership to act in this situation. Despite all difficulties and challenges, we have faith and hope that everything will be fine and we will continue to serve people. Taking this opportunity, I would like to thank all our partners for their help and support. Thank you very much. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Chair. I think it has been a wonderful experience for us as well, because like listening from two speakers, one having experience of working, Caritas India having experience of working in India for more than 50 years, and with Chair having experience of working for like just a few years. So I think with now we move on to the question and answer session. I think many of us has already put your questions on in the chat box, and it has also been answered by Dr. Richard and Howard. So I don't think I should go through the question and answer that has been mentioned in the chat, because we are running out of time, running behind the time. And if there are any questions, please raise your hands and we will put it to our speakers as well as to other people who have good experience on localization and promoting local leaders. I think most of the answer has been answered, except for Kim Ratana, how we Caritas brought the Grand Bargain agenda as a basis for localization and Caritas leadership. Dr. Richard, would you like to respond to his question, please?
Yes, actually we have witnessed, as you mentioned, one Caritas which has 50 years of experience, and the Shah which have maybe a little bit 3 to 4 years of experience, and then how they are leading the organization in the very different capacity. But the beautiful thing is, as you can see, our commitment. Our commitment is very strongly, whether you are 50-year Caritas or whether you are 3-4 year Caritas, I think. Our Caritas commitment, leadership commitment is very strongly visible in this context. We are really in the challenging situation, both looking at the India example, because of the cost and very big 1.4 billion people situation, and also for the Caritas Kyrgyzstan, especially geopolitical situation, is very tense. But we can really see how we listen to the presenter. They are really committed amidst those difficulties. So to answer Kim's question, I think this is a good example we should be sharing with the global humanitarian and development actors who are working around those leadership, especially local leadership development. I think the way Caritas hone and develop and nurture the leaders is quite unique and different from the way that we are very used to in the secular world. So that's my observation. Thank you. Over to you, Aparna.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. I think I don't see any hands raised. Therefore, I think we should end this session and move to another session. Before saying goodbye, I would like to thank everyone for your participation, and especially the two speakers for sharing the experience. Now, I would like to pass it to Mr. Maribel Bamboy. She's the moderator for the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ms. Arpana. And happy Easter to everyone from Caritas Taiwan. We just heard from our Caritas colleague, Babita, and share about their respective experiences on the significance of local leadership. Empowered and strengthened, but also with many challenges. Now we will move on to the equally important aspect, that is partnership. In his opening remark, we heard from Dr. Benedict Del Rosario. He mentioned that during the CI General Assembly in 2019, the Confederation approved the Caritas Fraternal Cooperation Partnership Guiding Principle with the purpose to guide the partnership among Caritas and non-Caritas organizations. Its affirmation and acceptance also renew and improve the already existing collective commitment to partnership, but remains many challenges to grow, to learn, and to improve to achieve healthy partnership. So without much further ado, for this topic, we have two speakers. Our first speaker is Mr. Mark De Silva, and he has been working with CRS since early 2000 and has been assigned to oversee programs in different countries across the continents. Since 2018, he is the CRS Regional Director for Asia, and he will be sharing to us the successes and challenges of putting partnership principles into actions. Then the second speaker is Ms. Claudia Api. She is from Caritas Myanmar, or KMSS. Before she joined Caritas Myanmar, she also worked as project manager in the Catholic Office for Relief and Refugees and assistant program manager in the Myanmar Disaster Reduction Committee. She has been working in the KMSS since 2019. And along these years of involvement, she has witnessed and experienced the growth and challenges of journeying together with partner organizations, and be it Caritas or non-Caritas organizations. Since 2020 to the present, she is the head of OD department of KMSS, and she will share to us Caritas Myanmar experiences on partnership. So once again, like the previous portion, those who have questions, you can post your questions in the chat box, or we will have also our Q&A after the sharing of the two speakers. Thank you. So may I call on Mr. Mark De Silva. Thank you.
Thank you, Maribel. Good afternoon, everyone. Ari, if you could go ahead and put the presentation up. I'm speaking from Phnom Penh, from Cambodia now, but I've put on a virtual background of Wat Arun in Bangkok. For the spiritual, we're all sort of wishing we could be in Bangkok where we normally have these meetings. And then we had a Caritas Asia partner meeting about 2.5 years ago, where Dr. Win Tu Chi really did talk a bit about this local leadership. So I just have about 6 or 7 slides, which I'd like to go through over the next 6 or 7 minutes or so. And I really want to try and focus on the successes and challenges of taking these partnership principles and these localization principles that we've heard about so far in this webinar, how we can put them into action. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to go straight into the key commitments that are in the CI white paper, commitments on localization. and really look at the mandates of these commitments, as well as the challenges and what actions we can take and have been taking. One of which I know is one of the most important commitments for many of you is this issue of whether we can allocate part of the project budget towards core costs to cover our admin costs. Dr. Richard mentioned this earlier on in his comments. And that is actually, there is a mandate for that. It's commitment number 5 on that localization paper. What's the challenge for us not doing that? Well, it's really inertia. It's the historical approach that many of us on the funding side of the Caritas network just had never done. And so when we come into our positions, we don't see that previous budgets were like that. And we sort of say, well, we've got to focus on the programs. Sometimes we like to play what I call the donor excuse card. Oh, the donor won't allow this, so we can't do it. What can we do? And yet we've tried to address this challenge within CRS over the last couple of years by just making a commitment that we're going to do it. We've signed this commitment to do this as an agency. We now need to do it. And we might not be able to achieve that overnight, but if we commit to doing it, we think we can make progress towards that month by month and year by year. And so we need to be more intentional about planning for it, budgeting for it, and monitoring it. We have one example where we have been supporting Caritas Bangladesh to meet the USAID, what they call the de minimis 10% criteria to get 10% of Caritas core costs budgeted, even as a sub-grantee, a sub-recipient on USAID grants. So that requires a certain level of capacity within the finance systems, but as long as we feel we can demonstrate that between Caritas and CRS, we can actually budget in US government grants for 10% overhead. But for our grants where we don't have US government de minimis and it's just our private grants, we can use our private funds to actually cover those 5%. And we can use our private funds to cover it even when the donors don't agree to cover it from their side as well. So I've been checking with all of the country representatives across Asia, and we've been reviewing on a year-by-year basis. And a number of our country programs have started not just waiting for Caritas and other partners to ask for this, but we're trying to promote it from our end. So if that has not been your experience with CRS in your country, let them know, because this is our commitment, and let me know as well, because we're making a commitment to this. Let's move to the next slide. Another area which we can put these principles into practice is allocating 2% of project budgets for capacity strengthening, for investment in that. Again, we have a mandate for this in our localization and commitment number 2. As Dr. Richard said, we have a historical approach of having our budgets be focused just on the project and what's needed to implement the project, and not focused on what we can do through that project to help build the capacity of our local Caritas partners. Again, as long as we make a commitment to this, we can build. It's very easy to build 2% into all of our budgets, whether it's donor, external back donors, or whether it's our private funds. We just need to be systematic about doing it, allocating it, and then monitoring it. And so in this context, I'm very happy to announce that we're now in the middle of the first year of a new initiative, which we're calling the Empower Asia Initiative. It's about $400,000 a year that we've allocated from our own private discretionary funds that isn't dependent on any donor saying yes or no in future years. It's a multi-year commitment from now at least through 2030 to support member organizations here in Caritas to strengthen your humanitarian response capacities. It's based on the CIMS self-assessment, so we're not introducing a new assessment system. We're helping our partners to use existing assessments and to really develop the humanitarian response capacity so that you will be more eligible for funding directly from donors, and that you can play a stronger role in national coordinating functions. And we are doing this in partnership with Caritas Asia, because Caritas Asia does have as part of its strategy the coordination of humanitarian response and disaster risk reduction. And so I'm happy to note that at least 4 or 5 of the national organizations, Caritas partners here in Asia, are already going to be participating in this during the first year, and we hope to expand that in future years. And so this is a commitment that's not dependent on a donor project. The focus of the project itself is building Caritas capacity. We could go to the third area we can put this into practice, supporting our Caritas partners to secure direct funding. This is commitment number 3 on the localization paper. What's the challenge? Something we often don't speak of within Caritas meetings, that awkward unspoken conflict of interest. If we, as some of the Caritas organizations historically have been raising funding from some of the governments and other donors, sometimes we may not be so eager to try and transfer that funding relationship to a local Caritas partner, because that means less funding for us as the European or the American Caritas partner getting it. And so we just need to acknowledge that sometimes and address it head on. Sometimes it makes sense for us to be a financial intermediary, but we should be working towards an outcome where we are no longer needed as a financial intermediary. I think sometimes we as funding Caritas partners might feel that there's no longer a role for us if we're not a financial intermediary. But CRS's experience has been is that there's many roles we can contribute as a partner organization that does not require being a prime financial intermediary. And in some cases, we've actually built ourselves, we've been asked, to build ourselves as a subrecipient to a national Caritas partner to provide technical or other types of support to that partner. And so we have examples in Nepal, Bangladesh, Timor-Leste, and Samoa, where we've helped the Caritas partners in those countries to actually access funding directly from other donors. And sometimes we might be involved formally or informally to support the project. Sometimes we're not even involved at all. It's just helping the partner to get the funds directly, and they can implement it on their own. The next slide. This is the fourth one, supporting the active participation of national Caritas partners in humanitarian coordination mechanisms. This is the sixth localization commitment in the paper. Again, sometimes there's a potential conflict of interest if we as Caritas funding partners have been participating in those mechanisms. Sometimes we're satisfied to stay in that position as opposed to looking to take a back seat and create space for local actors there. And so the actions we've been taking is to continually advocate with donors to create and allocate those seats at the table. I'm really happy we have colleagues from Bangladesh here on the call. Their staff have been selected by international organizations to lead technical working groups to advance localization and to revise shelter guidelines in Bangladesh. That's a great success. That's a great acknowledgement by the international donor humanitarian community of the key role that Caritas partners in country can play. And so we're happy to sort of just celebrate that and sort of acknowledge that here during this webinar. And then the final principle I want to talk about on the next slide, Ari, is this one of demonstrating mutual accountability. This is not so much within the white paper on local leadership, but we also have Caritas Federation partnership principles, and this is where these 5 values of transparency, openness, honesty, accountability, and trust come from. And so we have to always be aware whether we are putting each of these values into action. And I have to say, the challenge sometimes is that we don't do a very good job as funding Caritas partners of balancing the accountability that we have to the donors with the accountability that we also have to our partners, which is our Caritas partners, as well as the communities that we collectively serve. And so how do we overcome that challenge? One way to do that is to develop a broad-based memorandum of understanding that is not project specific. It's not a project agreement. It's actually a relationship agreement that articulates each partner's roles and responsibilities in that country. And it goes beyond projects. And it actually can be adapted, even though we have a template. Not only can it should be adapted to the specific realities, interests, and needs country by country. And so in some of the countries, this is an active part of how we interact with local partners. In other countries, unfortunately, we may have signed an MOU a few years ago and forgotten about it. So I think it's never too late to go back and see if we've signed one of these MOUs and to conduct periodic reflections and assessments to see how well each of us as partners are living up to that. So that's one mechanism, very tangible action that we can take as Caritas partners to demonstrate mutual accountability. So the final slide I have is just actually to give you a look at the actual tool that we're using within CRS. Even though the pandemic has hit on an annual basis for the last 2 years, we have a very simple self-assessment tool that each of our country program teams have been asking themselves these questions. As you can see, some of these columns look a bit like CIMS, but each of our teams ask themselves, how well are we doing in terms of helping our partners access funding directly from donors? How well are we doing in building partner capacity? How well are we doing in covering the core costs of our strategic partners? And I have to say, 2 years ago, some of our country programs circled a 1 or a 2. They said, we're not doing this. We don't spend time doing it, or we're just not doing it enough. And we said, okay, fair enough. That's what your baseline is. Now let's try and move towards the right side of these columns, or we can get closer towards the good or the exemplary side of this. And then in some countries, we can do that within a year or two. Well, in some countries, we're already doing that, but in other countries, it might take a year or two before we can move. So this is something that we're trying to hold ourselves accountable to. But during this webinar, I would also ask all of you as our Caritas partners to help us hold ourselves accountable to this. So with that, let me finish up and hand it back to you, Maribel.
Thank you, Mark. It seems that there is no question posted in our chat box, so perhaps we can proceed to Miss Claudia Ape. Please come in.
Okay, you share the presentation for me, right, Maribel? Okay, thank you. So good afternoon from Myanmar. I am representing KMSS. Allow me to use KMSS because I'm very much used to it. And I have been with KMSS for so many years until now. So yeah, and also I have experience working with different partners like UN, INGOs, CSO, governments, CI, and others, so many partners. So based on this experience, I would like to share the key aspects that make the partnership healthy. Of course, there are many more, but due to the time concern, I will focus on the 4 aspects. And next slide, please. Yeah, these are the 4 aspects that I would like to focus on my presentation. Next. The first one that I would like to emphasize is the partnership and coordination. Yes, we KMSS before the 2008, before the cyclone Nagis, we were very small. We have no profile. There is no proper document that we can name as a policy or procedures. But during the early stage of Nagis cyclones, all CI members nominated Caritas Australia to be the focal to coordinate the partners, to support the KMSS. Since then, KMSS start learning and able to grow in managing the fund in a proper and systematical ways, and trying to have and avoiding overlappings and confusions. And we, based on that experience, we expand our coordination mechanisms, like having the annual partner meeting with our CI member and CIDSE members, and that help us in coming out with many programs and also improves in learning and sharing. We also have other coordination mechanism with our local CSO as well. So from there, we can increase our program impact, and also we are able to ensure our stronger voice to governments and also to other donors as necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, about the long-term commitment for partnerships. Many CI members are long-term partnerships of KMSS since Cyclone Nagis. I can recall that we have a Caritas Australia, CRS, CAP4, Miserios, and Caritas Denmark. And TrueCare was supporting KMSS since the beginning of Kitchen conflict 12 years ago. And they had supported closely KMSS for 7 years. Through the funding and implementation support of TrueCare, and also accompaniment and mentoring support by Caritas Australia, and technical support by CRS for shelters and other things. KMSS become stronger, and as a part of localizations, and because of KMSS becoming stronger, DFI provide the right funding to KMSS, which we can say that KMSS is now the prime recipient. And also from there, KMSS is growing, and now KMSS is the biggest humanitarian actor in the chain, as well as KMSS is almost in everywhere in the conflict-affected area, providing the humanitarian supports to the displaced and affected, conflict-affected people. We were also able to respond to COVID-19 response across the country. And we also have the other long-term commitment program like nutrition, and that also help KMSS to be the national, to stand as a chairperson in National Nutrition Network. Next slide, please. In relation to flexibilities in partnership, During the normal situations, actually, we were very much complying with the requirement of partners, but due to the current context of armed conflicts, we need to seek for some flexibilities. Because many of our staff have to flee from their home, and they have been being relocated in jungle or in somewhere else with their families. So in such conflict and stressful situations, many of us were unable to concentrate on the projects, and many development projects we could not be able to continue implementing it. So we communicate with our respective donors, and some donor has agreed to convert the development project into humanitarian assistance, which is very helpful, and that we were able to help our people who are needed. And also, we also we will also offer some additional funding opportunities from partners like CRS Turkey, Caritas Internationalis, Caritas and Caritas Denmark, to be able to have supporting humanitarian assistance and COVID response as called by the needs of our people across the country. In this specific condition, flexibility is really required, and the partners that I mentioned earlier, they are very much flexible with us, because it's very difficult due to the travel restriction, the safety, and all those sensitivities concerned. We were unable to collect the detail and all the documentation. We could not do it properly, but our partners have good understandings on that, and open for us some flexibilities, and accept our concept notes and our report with some flexibles. In terms of the qualities, actually some of our reports are not in good qualities due to incomplete data, and sometimes we were delays in submission of the reports because of the connection flaws or other concerns. But our partners are really supportive and have very good understandings on that. And we also have big challenges in due to the banking issues. We have big challenges, but our partners like Caritas and others, they also helping us. Yes, and the last slide, please. Yeah, in addition to the program like developments, humanitarians, and coordinations, another mechanism that I would like to focus here is the partnership for institutional development. We experience and we believe that the partnership for institutional development is crucial and very effective. We have partners like Caritas Australia, CRS, CAFOS, Caritas, who are supporting us in strengthening the systems of our organizations. These systems include financial management, HR, safeguarding, and managing, and documentations. We also have Miserios, who has been with KMSS since 2001. So it's almost 20 years, who are providing the capacity building program for the entry-level staff, which the program is still ongoing. And also with the support with Miserio, we also have another program named Flame. This is for the managerial level staff, focusing on the project cycle management. And CAFOD also stayed in with us since from many years until now, providing the capacity building for KMSS staff. Those capacity skills related to the humanitarian response. And we also have the NAM CM member, which is an UNOPS. And through their support, we are implementing the capacity program for the KMSS top leaderships, focusing on the leadership development skills and grant management skills. In addition to that, we also have non-funding mechanism like a long-term accompaniment support. Now, this support is provided by Caritas Australia. The Caritas Australia staff based in KMSS office, working closely with the leadership and management level staff, providing strategy directions, supporting in developing the strategy plan, and also expanding the networkings, etc. So all these are the mechanisms and the supports that we receive under the institutional development, and we are very grateful, and we would like to express our sincere thanks to all the partners. So because of your support and because of the four aspects that I mentioned earlier, KMSS is now become one of the biggest local organizations. We have very good reputable and trusted, we become a trusted national level local organizations. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Miss Claudia. So far, we don't have a specific question posted in the chat box, but there is, shall I call it a feedback or comment? Or is there anybody who would like to share a little bit on healthy partnership from your own experience? Dr. Richards, would you like to comment on what is posted in the chat box before I pass the floor to Miss Moira? Or we just...
Oh, if nobody is asking, I just want to break the ice. It's an ice-breaking question I would like to ask. So it's very interesting to hear how Mark presented about how the global partners are really tangibly pushing to support the partnerships, through these different commitments. At the same time, we hear from Ms. Claudia that there are a lot of improvement through this help, So my question both to Mark and Claudia, so for this kind of partnership, and you need to engage in a kind of sort of the interact to achieve those things, So how do we engage for this realization of this stronger partnership, healthy partnership? So what is your engagement experience? I would like to ask this question. Over to you, either Mark or Claudia.
Claudia, would you like to go first?
You first, please, Mark. I'm thinking.
Well, Dr. Richard, I think sometimes we can tend to overcomplicate things when sometimes the simplest solution is the solution you should be looking forward to. For me, I think it's about just how regularly are we raising these issues as partners, and how much are we just kind of going about our business and just kind of assuming that unless the other partner raises a concern, there's no problem. And I think sometimes when we just make those assumptions, hidden feelings about the strength of the partnership that just are left unsaid, because we're a Caritas family, and it's important within the Caritas family to be polite and to be respectful. And sometimes we feel if we give constructive feedback, it might be taken the wrong way and it might affect the relationship. But that's actually not the basis. Trust is actually the basis of a strong relationship. And part of that, once you have that trust, then you can feel comfortable and confident that you can give constructive feedback to a partner, and it will be received in the spirit in which it was meant. And so for me, I guess my experience is that whenever I've seen that our staff don't wait to hear whether there's a problem, but just are constantly, regularly asking open-ended questions on what are we doing well? Where could we be doing a better job? Are we sharing the same assumptions in terms of why CRS is in any of the countries that we're in, that the role we're in country, does it align with the role that you as the Caritas organization and country are wanting for us? And sometimes when that's the answer to that is, well, not quite, it's a little bit hard to say that. So unless we're actually asking for that feedback, it's hard for, I think, partners to give that. So I think it's on us to, and that's why we're doing this self-assessment, for us to ask ourselves, how much are we doing this? And if we feel we're not, let's go out to our partners. And the regular touching base on an MOU allows you to do that on a structured basis across all of the key principles and responsibilities that we've already mutually agreed upon we want to do jointly within that MOU. So those are my initial thoughts. Claudia, hopefully you've had some chance to think of something as well.
I would like to, yes, I agree with the word trust, because before the coup happened in our country, we thought that we have very good relationship with our Caritas confederations, and there is very high solidarities. But after the coup happens, we feel that we were treated something, let us say English, unfair or something, maybe they don't trust us, especially some of the CI members, I mean, not everyone, but few of our CI members. In our context, it's very difficult to provide the detailed data and information of the grounds, and also sometimes you cannot use the proper channel to transfer those cash, all those things. But some of our partners are still very rigid, and seems that I don't know the right word, but it's like not treated with very trust like before. So having the trust is really from the beginning, and gradually improving trust between. It's very. I mean, this is the way how it should be. Because earlier when we engage with our partners, we thought that we have very strong trust among them. But finally, we feel that some of us are not on the same feeling with us. Excuse me if I... It's too personal, please excuse me in this regard.
No, I think, thank you, Claudia and Mark. I think you are really touching the very core and then mostly taught and hardly practiced partnership principle of trust, no? When you talk about humanitarian work, I think people talk about trust, I think. I mean, Caritas, we can sincerely and we can admit that, no? It's not a very easy thing to build trust. So as Mark mentioned, long continuous engagement and then sincere, open, constructive feedback and a kind of feed forward, those kind of things are building trust, I think. Maybe I would like to hear from Howard. I think Howard has been talking quite a lot of those trust issues at the global level. Would you like to comment a little bit more, Howard?
Yes, I think the very fact that we're meeting today and hearing all these rich kind of presentations and insights, and also both very practical experience of different programmatic and sort of system approaches, but also then this kind of deeper theological reflection as Caritas on Catholic principles like subsidiarity and fraternal cooperation and so on. I think this is a really wonderful part of building that shared understanding and or trust, and that hopefully out of this, in our follow-up, that today isn't just a one-off ad hoc discussion or reflection, but we go back to our own organizations, we take the discussions we've had today, there'll probably be some sort of report out of this. I'm sure we'll hear about that in the last session. And I know that there's the regional group that's been set up, but that it's as much on INGO partners of Asian Caritas national organizations, as well as on you as national and diocesan partners, to then come back together, both at the country level, but also this is, as was mentioned, part of a series of regional webinars. And so there will be a European regional webinar in about a month's time. So when the report from this is written, and then together with the summary from the other regional reports, it's up to the INGO partners in Europe, but also in North America and elsewhere, and in Asia and Australia and so on, to then respond to the issue, both the good practices, but the challenges around trust and other issues that have been raised, so that hopefully you see that we're acting on the issues that you're raising, both the good practices and the challenges, and then that will be a way hopefully to build trust and also build progress on everything that's been raised today. I don't know if that's helpful contribution with.
Sorry, thank you, Howard. Maribel, over to you, Maribel. Sorry.
Okay, thank you also, Dr. Richard, and to those who shared their feedback. So I think it's about time to turn over the floor to Ms. Moira for the next topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maribel. Thank you all, and good afternoon to everyone. I think a lot has been said up till now, and really a deep reflection is ongoing. I will not end today, as we are sure of it, but it's important that we are doing that. I'm Moira Monacelli. I'm the Director of Operations of Caritas Internationalis, and I'm in charge to moderate this last session of that meeting on risk management. Together with me this afternoon, there will be two Caritas representatives from the Asia region who will share with us their experience of risk management related to localization. Mr. Sebastian Rosario, the Executive Director of Caritas Bangladesh, and Juventino Ben Mendoza, Program Director of the Catholic Office for Emergency Relief and Refugees, the unit of Caritas Thailand with a specific mandate to provide emergency relief and protection to refugees. We will organize this session as follows. I will introduce briefly, even because we are over time, this session, and then we will listen to the two experiences of Caritas Bangladesh and Caritas Thailand, and we will have a short session of question and answers. To introduce this session, I would like to start by the key concept of risk. Today, I think that taking into consideration the concept of risk in the NGO sector is a necessity. Risk, if we want to define it, is the effect of uncertainty on the capacity of an organization to achieve the objectives planned. And for an organization, risk management is a question of introducing the process of identifying and managing uncertainties or threats, if you want, that might affect the organization. So I can really say that risk management is part of the good governance of an organization, and is also part of a culture of an organization of anticipating problems and finding appropriate solutions, or at least mitigation measures. We can say that today risk management is a key element for each organization at institutional and strategic level. In fact, risks are of different natures and also can affect organizations at different levels. This is why risk management should be, or must be, if you allow me to say, a priority for the highest level of management of each organization, and also as a key component of partnership. It is a means to make better decisions and also to build better partnerships. Caritas Internationalis, as we all know, has decided to use the Caritas Internationalis management standards as a unique and common tool to assess the compliance of the member organization to a set of standards and good practices, and to transform the non-compliance to a dynamic risk management process. We all know that there is a risk analysis and a risk assessment component in the management standard, in order to identify for each organization the main organizational risk and deal with them appropriately. This is one of the best practices of our confederation to address gaps and also minimize risk, both as single organizations and in partnership as a whole confederation. When we talk about localization and local leadership, we can see the key importance of adopting a risk management approach for each member organization, but also in building partnership. We hear everywhere the concept of risk transfer, risk sharing, But what does it mean concretely? And what is the Caritas experience in it? I think that COVID-19 gave us important lessons on the concept of local leadership and partnership, and especially on the importance of long-term investment on capacity strengthening and institutional development in order to achieve two objectives. First of all, to ensure sustainability of local organization. And secondly, to allow local organization to take the lead of actions and take it in the most appropriate way by responding to the required criteria. This implies also, and I'm repeating and I'm highlighting a concept that has been already underlined by the previous speakers, the concept of fraternal cooperation. How can we do together as a confederation, as partners within the confederation and in partnership with other stakeholders? How can we share risk? With this open question, I would like to give the floor to the two voices from the Asia region, starting by Mr. Sebastian Rosario, the Executive Director of Caritas Bangladesh, also member of the Asia Regional Working Group on Safeguarding and Localization, and in regard of management standard, also a coordinator and assessor of the management standard. Sebastian, the floor is yours to share the experience of Caritas Bangladesh regarding risk management.
Thank you, Moira. Greetings to you all from Caritas Bangladesh. During these 7 minutes, I will try to share some areas of risk management. We try to avoid the financial risk areas. Now I would like to discuss the risk management in the context of COVID response and our big humanitarian response for Rohingya refugee. I start with the COVID response. Next slide, please. During COVID, at the beginning, we did not have any financial capacity to support. And in that time, we communicated with all of our partners of the running projects and mobilized about 705,000 US dollar, with which we covered 33,256 households. The projects were mostly development projects and some of the disaster management development projects. I see it as a great example of risk sharing of the partners with the implementing Caritas. So I appreciate it on behalf of Caritas Bangladesh. And we all know that during the pandemic situation, the government declared the restriction movement. We were isolated inside the house. So being in the house, we could not implement our regular activities, and also could not be with our participants, project participants. Even the staff could not be in the field. At that time, whenever we got the approval from the donors for 705,000 US dollar, we introduced mobile money transfer modality to transfer this fund to them, and which also reduced COVID infection and distribution costs. So that is a good example for us. So during this COVID, that was also good practice for Caritas Bangladesh. And what we also did that on daily basis, all of our colleagues, they also kept contact with the participants and all the staff. Our decision offices, they would produce a daily report of their collected information. Based on that information, we also provided awareness, raising materials and also hygiene kits. If we talk about the emergency response program, this is in Ukhia, Cox's Bazar, and Bhasanchar Island. We have more than 50 years of experience in emergency response program. and also lately started with the development program. But this huge crisis with the Rohingya refugee, it was a big challenge for Caritas Bangladesh to handle the crisis, because in this area Caritas was quite new. So the accompaniment and technical support of Caritas managed CI member organizations capacitated Caritas Bangladesh, and following their support, we could effectively manage the huge crisis. As Mark said, that in the Rohingya response program at the as a co-lead in the shelter sector, Caritas Bangladesh is playing an important role. CRS played a leading role to promote us in this leadership. So we are proud of that now. And in the Rohingya camp, we also have other leading role, like for site improvement in the hilly area. Always there is a risk of landslide. So for the site improvement and drainage of water, wastewater, and rainwater, we invented the bamboo draining system, and also the site protection with our technical expertise. So those were example for other agencies working there. And the government authority used to refer Caritas Bangladesh work and the system the Caritas Bangladesh is doing. So that was very important learning for us. We could take the lead there. And we in the shelter sector, this shelter, we improved the quality, and we designed with the support of also other partners, and that was approved by the government authority, and that was recommended to other agencies to implement in the Rohingya camps. So we see it as a great experience and the best practices of Caritas Bangladesh. Experience in Bhasanchar, as we all know that earlier time, UN agencies and also the local NGOs, none of us were in favor of shifting Rohingya people in the isolated island Bhasanchar. But the government initiated and government took the steps. Also, government shifted some of the Rohingya people in the island. That time, our government, the NGO Health Bureau, who actually monitor and guide the NGOs, they requested all the local Caritas NGOs to support in the Bhasanchar with the NFI and food items. So we had to agree. We had to agree to keep a good relationship with the authority, but we did not have fund. How can help them? How can we be with them? At that time, our local church, they considering the sufferings of the people, according to the social teaching of the local church, to be with the poorest people who suffers, to be with them. The local church actually introduced supporting those people in the Rohingya in the Bhasanchar, which actually we had also spoke to help them. So the government pressure reduced, and for us that was a scope for reassessment of the island, and based on that assessment, we also gained managing capacity. Now, when UNHCR had the MOU and UNHCR came forward to fund Caritas Bangladesh, now we are able to work there in the Bhasanchar. So it was a piloting, and our local church was supporting. Then Caritas Bangladesh could enter and could maintain the image, good image with the government officials. Next slide, please. Now, if we talk about the strength of Caritas Bangladesh has a strong governing system with policy and procedures. In the governing, our general body, bishops are the members. We have diocesan representatives. We have expert people. So they are always with us. This is very much supportive for us to manage any kind of risk, whether it is a local risk, national risk, or it is a risk of political threats. We can have their support. And Caritas Bangladesh has more than 50 years. Actually, Caritas started in 1970, so it is more than 50 years. As Caritas Bangladesh, it is 50 years. We are now celebrating. So 50 years of experience in the frontline emergency relief and response program with quality service and love and dignity for the people, as we are taught from the social teaching of Catholic Church. So with this experience, we are always ready to help any of these disaster affected people with love and dignity. Our strong presence in 6 disaster hotspots. In Bangladesh, there are 6 disaster hotspots: coastal area, drought prone area, then his CST area, so and so on. So we have our presence, and also we have our experienced and dedicated staff. So this is our strength, and with that strength we can immediately intervene if there is any man-made disaster or natural disasters. We have strong networks with the other networks with the other NGOs, local and national networks and alliances. We are members of the START network, and for now, any kind of support, with any kind of support, we can move to the spot to support with immediate support with the funding from START network. We are the now the Caritas Bangladesh is the chair of Localization Technical Working Group in Bangladesh. We are one of the signatory, and also we have a big group in this working group. We have about 50 members of Caritas NGOs. So we regularly reflecting on our challenges and scope to how can we ensure or impact the implementation of localization. We are also the founder and current treasurer for National Alliance of Humanitarian Actors in Bangladesh, NAHAB. We, as I already said, we are the co-lead of shelter and NFI sector in Rohingya response program. We are now going to hosting Asia Shelter from 2020 in Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh being the hosting country, we are facilitating the secretariat task here. CB also has strong coordination with the 12 clusters and 8 working groups in Bangladesh Humanitarian Response Mechanism, coordinated by UN Residential Coordinator Office. So these are the few strengths. We have long list, but I know we cannot go on all those. Now, if I talk about next slide, please. Some of the challenges there are, as I said, we have capacities, we have good practices, we are managing risks. Actually, we are managing risks every day, every time, every year. There are short-term risks, long-term risks, mid-term risks. There is risks of political threat, also risks of our geographical location. Many kinds of risks we are managing. We have financial risks also, which I did not want to talk now. But in the challenges area, we would like to highlight that we see the declining trend of the funding in Bangladesh due to economic upliftment of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is now dreaming to have upper middle income country status in 2031 and the first world country status in 2041. So that is a challenge coming in. So also emergencies in other parts of the world. So the fund might go other parts. It has already started. So we see it is a challenge. So in this case, we have to be ready now from now to with our capacity and also capacity for local fundraising as well as institutional fund obtaining. So continuous development of staff capacity in the rapid and frequent change context of humanitarian disaster response mechanism is also a challenge for Caritas Bangladesh. Mark said that 2% of the allocated budget in the project used for capacity development, but this is not true for all the funding, all the donors. So that should be advocated to allow us. In the Rohingya response program, we see we need to have approval from 3 tiers, that is from NGFS Bureau, Refugee and Relief Repatriation Commissioner, and also campaigners. Taking those 3 approval, we see sometimes positive for one department, another gives the negative report. So that is a challenging. So with our implementation delays, our approval of project delays, which we call FD7 delays. We have our set of staff, we have our operation cost, but with this delaying, operation cost increase. So we see it is a challenge to manage also with the 5% support for this operation cost and also core cost of this management. And we see sometimes due to delaying the execution of the programs, the beneficiaries, the participants, their portion of approved money is less because part of that goes to the staff salaries. If it is a project of 6 months and it takes 9 months, staff are being paid 9 months, with the 6 months salary, it is not possible. So the actual input for the participants reduced another 30%. So 3 months. So that is a bad thing for us. We should consider this. Next slide, please. So with regard to a few recommendations, we could not bring all here, but 3 of them. Creating provision for continuous improvement of staff capacity as well as institutional capacity, so that we are able to address new types of emergency under changed context, mechanism, policy requirements of donors. So we would propose that in the project there will be budget for institutional capacity building as well, because when a staff are capacitated, we do not have project we cannot keep. At the same time, some capacity staff, they move to other NGOs, INGOs or UN agencies with higher salary. So we cannot stop them. Then we lose our capacity. So we always need capacity development. At the same time, we need capacity strengthening. We need advocacy and networking with donors, INGOs and UN agencies, so that they make available humanitarian funds. We see that Caritas member organizations, those are donor countries, they are very much willing to support Caritas Bangladesh. But when it comes to other institutional donors, they actually are not that much supportive or considerate. So we see we need advocacy there from CI level. That can be in the partnership area. It was I thought it would come somehow. I did not notice if it came there, that the approach of Caritas donors and the institutional donors are always different. Institutional donors mostly focus on their financial compliances with as a risk, but other areas is less priority. So we can create a pool fund to address any emergency instantly, because when a cyclone, when a sudden flash flood, when an earthquake happen, the victims need immediate support. We go there, we conduct our assessment, but we cannot support them instantly. It takes sometime 1 month. With the start fund, it is more quicker, but still it is not adequate to support. And we also propose to keep flexibility in program implementation and budget also, considering the local context and risk assessment results. Because of the delay due to approval process, delay due to natural calamities like during the COVID outbreak restriction, we could not move to the camp. So at that time, it was very much needed to have flexibility in program implementation and a budget. But some of the institutional donors, they are very strict. They say you have to burn the amount of money, otherwise we cannot continue. So from our point of view, burning budget is, or utilizing budget is the priority. If I want to utilize budget, I can spend the money in any way, but that is not our purpose. Our purpose is to bring the good service to the deprived, distressed, and poor and needy people. So we need this kind of flexibility. With that, I conclude here. Thank you, Moira. Thank you all for being with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. And I will, in order to respect the time given, I will now give the floor to Mr. Ben Mendoza, the Program Director of the Catholic Office for Emergency Relief and Refugees of Caritas Thailand. His presentation will reflect the structure of the presentation of Sebastian for Caritas Bangladesh. There will be first a sharing of experience regarding risk management, then some highlights regarding strengths and best practices from Caritas Thailand, few challenges, and final recommendations from the perspective of Caritas Thailand. Then in the end, I will wrap up about the main points of the two presentations. Mr. Ben, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moira, and best greetings to everyone. Being the last speaker, I will be mindful of the time. I am happy to share with you the experience of Caritas Thailand on risk management. And let me begin this discussion from the perspective of our present operational context. Next slide, please. In Thailand, we are presently dealing with two simultaneous crises. First, the persistent COVID-19 pandemic and its widespread impact on all sectors, particularly on the lives of 91,000 refugees from Myanmar who have long been living in 9 refugee camps along the Thai-Myanmar border. Second, and at the same time, we are dealing with an influx of new refugees coming into Thailand due to the turmoil and armed fighting in Myanmar following the military coup of February 1st, 2021, which has resulted in the displacement of at least 235,000 people along Myanmar's southeast border with Thailand. In this context, a discussion on risk management is particularly relevant, timely, and needed. And I would like to cite some concrete examples which highlight the idea of risk management, more significantly about risk sharing. For the COVID-19 situation, an example of how risks are being managed and shared is the coordinated comprehensive COVID-19 response plan formulated by the CCSDPT, which is a coordinating body of 13 NGOs in which COER is an active member, who work in the 9 refugee camps along the border. All of us, 13 NGOs, are involved in a coordinated plan consisting of 5 pillars, which cover various sectors, such as detection and treatment, which is led by the medical NGOs, risk communications and community engagement, in which COER is directly involved, food assistance, protection, and advocacy and coordination with the Thai government. Meetings among the pillars are conducted every month and coordinated by a task force composed of agency directors. For the influx of new refugees who have been displaced by the brutal armed fighting, and more are expected to cross the border into Thailand, COER is a part of a network of 18 organizations who have jointly developed the Coordinated Interagency Myanmar Situation Refugee Preparedness and Response Plan, or MSRP-RP, in which the role of each organization has been clearly defined, and a joint funding appeal for this intervention has been developed and launched. Both of these are concrete examples of collaborative actions which feature joint risk management and risk sharing. Also, for addressing these two crises, COER has received strong support from our Caritas partners, for which we are very grateful. Special thanks to Caritas Germany, Spain, Korea, CRS, Trocra, and Miserio for supporting and allowing us the much needed flexibility to address these two crises effectively and to ensure continuity of our services in view of the risks, such as those which involve restrictions on access to the camps, changes in government policies, costs of relief items, and concerns for staff safety. Next slide, please. In terms of strengths, our key strength is that Caritas Thailand and COER have a long history and frontline experience in emergency relief and refugee operations in Thailand. In 1972, 50 years ago, Caritas Thailand was registered with Caritas Internationalis. In 1978, Caritas Thailand established the Catholic Office for Emergency Relief and Refugees, COER, to address the large influx of Indo-Chinese refugees into Thailand. In 1984, the first large group of refugees from Myanmar came into Thailand, and COER started operating at the Thai-Myanmar border. Today, 38 years later, Caritas Thailand COER continues to work and accompany over 91,000 refugees from Myanmar who are confined in refugee camps along the Thai-Myanmar border, making this one of the longest running protracted refugee situations in the world. As a frontliner, COER is well positioned to have a deep understanding of conditions and needs on the ground. We are blessed to have highly committed and dedicated staff, most of whom speak the local languages of our client refugees. This way, we are able to obtain direct and unfiltered information from our clients without loss of translations. This knowledge has become very valuable for formulating effective actions and for collaborative action to share the risks with other humanitarian actors, networks, and our donors. Another strength is the positive reputation that we have earned over the years. I am glad to share with you that COER is well respected and acknowledged by other organizations in Thailand for our deep understanding about the refugees and the trust that has been built with the refugee communities throughout our 38 years of working with them. The main challenges for us as a local NGO, and this must be considered as ongoing challenges, is to continue building our organizational capacities to identify and manage risks better. Also, as all of us have surely experienced, conditions and situations change, and flexibility is needed to deal with changes and uncertainties, such as restrictions on access to the refugees, changes in government policies, and other emergency situations. On the matter of recommendations, I would propose 3 simple and practical recommendations for improving risk management and for enhancing risk sharing with our partners, and also for strengthening local capacities. First, it is important to bear in mind that risk management is also an opportunity to build and develop stronger partnerships with our sister Caritas member organizations, international organizations, and with other humanitarian service actors and networks. The MSRPRP and the COVID-19 response plan are examples of this. Second, I believe it's very important to engage our donor partners in risk management from the very start of program planning, and to keep them updated about developments without waiting for submission of regular project reports. This will help to make the partners be more actively engaged in our work. Third recommendation is for risk management to be an integral component of all our programs. A practical suggestion to understand and reduce risks is perhaps to conduct pilot projects first, when possible and practical, before mainstreaming our full program proposals. On this point, I will end. I thank you for your attention, and I now hand over the floor back to Moira.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thanks to the 2 voices from the Asia region for having shared their experience. I think that few points I can highlight from these 2 presentations. The first point is that one of the common experience was about COVID-19, no? The role of the local organizations during COVID-19 to response and the network with the other member organizations, together with the challenges that have been addressed by local organizations in this challenging time. And then 2 strengths that are common for these 2 Caritas. The first, that I think is common for all Caritas member organizations, the presence in the field. And the presence in the field not only during the moment of the highest emergency, but before, during, and after the emergency time. And the second common point is about networking both with local partners and with the international partners. But I would like to really stay a few minutes on the recommendations, because also in the areas of recommendations we have some important common points that I think it is key to keep in mind, and after also this moment of sharing and reflection, to keep in mind for further reflection in the future about partnership and localization. First of all, the key importance of institutional development and capacity strengthening, to incorporate capacity strengthening and institutional development in longer term strategy and in all programs. The importance to continue to advocate with donors, with United Nations and international NGOs, in order to really share challenges and share also best practices. The importance of flexibility in program funding and in the implementation of the activities. Not because we want too much freedom to implement activities, but in order to respond to the needs on the field. And then 2 important points highlighted by Ben in his last presentation. The importance of engaging partners in risk management strategies since the beginning of this program. So doing that together, and the importance of having risk management as an integral part of the programs, so as an institutional component of the organization. So by wrapping up, I would say, by using the same words used by Ben, considering risk management as an opportunity to strengthen partnership, in order that this element and this component can be a key point to strengthen partnership, to strengthen fraternal cooperation, and also to address those challenges that we live every day about partnership and about risk sharing and risk transfer. So thank you very much to Ben and Sebastian for their sharing of experiences. I don't know if there is any question or any comment that participants would like to share. Before that, I give the floor back to Dr. Richard. I see that a lot of reflections that have been shared before are also valid for that session regarding the principle of subsidiarity, regarding the really the reflection on the localization concept, also by the perspective of our values and principles. But if there is anything else to be shared or to be asked to Ben and Sebastian, they are available. I don't see all participants, but I don't think there are questions or comments. I think also it is important to say that the reflection is not ending today, as I said at the beginning. So this is just a moment of sharing and reflecting, but this should be continued and should be a continuous reflection, not only in the Asia region, but for our whole confederation. So I think at this point, also because we are a bit over time, I will give the floor back to Dr. Richard. If you have any additional point or comments, Dr. Richard, back to you. Thank you very much.
No more point, Moira. Thank you for facilitating that very important session of risk management. And so thanks to speakers who share their experience and we make a very strong recommendation. So this is really a start of our work for the localization. So I would like to call upon Ms. Floriana to make some conclusion remark for this very rich session. I'm sorry about you, Floriana, because you have so many things to digest, but I hope that you'll be able to make a very good summary out of the rich sharing by all the speakers. So the floor is yours, Floriana.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Yes, you're right. It was a very rich discussion with many recommendations and good points which were shared regarding challenges and good practices shared by Caritas members in implementing localization. But maybe I will start, let's come back to the origin. So I will start maybe with the opening. So the purpose, obviously, of this webinar was, to enrich, discussion which are already taking place within the Caritas Confederation on localization and make sure that we contribute from a more Caritas perspective. So what does obviously localization mean to Caritas, so that we can, contribute from our perspective to the grand bargain localization agenda, based on not only on challenges and good practices that we have collected now over the past, last couple of months and years, I would say, since the grand bargain was established after the World Humanitarian Summit, but also from, from based on the gospel. And I think Bishop Kike made a good point in his presentation, and this is the reason why I was saying let's come back to the essence of localization. So the ultimate goal of localization is really provide better services, to people we serve and make sure that we leave no one behind. And when Bishop Kike said that, we need really to, the Caritas action is based on the gospel, and our ultimate goal is really give voice to the marginalized, working with them and for them. I think he made a good point. And this is something that we really need to keep in mind when we speak about, localization. So the ultimate goal is not about us. It's not about to what extent we are having access to funds only, but the ultimate goal must always be, make sure that we provide good services and better services to people we serve in the respect of their dignity. And I think this is something which I've found in all presentations which were shared by Caritas colleagues. So really putting, the poorest, so the most marginalized at the center of our action. And I think also that when in one of the presentations regarding partnership, I think it was good to emphasize, the importance of overcoming our own interests. We are competing sometimes on our own interests. And I think, again, what should be really guiding our action, and we never should forget about, this really human-centered approach. So here again, emphasizing, the importance, and it was emphasized, the importance of communication and trust. So building the Caritas partnership on trust and communication. This should make sure to improve, the better service we provide to people we serve. I think the reflection obviously needs to continue. It was also said, I think, by one of the participants that localization, so the principle of subsidiarity goes far beyond localization, which is true. And I think this deserves further reflection within the Caritas Confederation. And as we have, as Aloysius has mentioned at the very beginning, we have already engaged in dialogue with other FBOs, so with other faith-based organizations, and especially with ACT Alliance, where there is a plan to deepen a bit more the reflection on how we perceive localization and how we can contribute to the grand bargain discussion on localization, and how do we continue to provide inputs, and especially now during the grand bargain annual meeting in June. But again, what I really want to stress and emphasize is the importance of always keep in mind the ultimate goal of localization, which is to adjust the humanitarian system, which needs obviously to fit for purpose, to meet growing needs, and also new emerging challenges that we are facing. And I think that the COVID pandemic is a sad example of that. We need to be better prepared for that, to better respond to the growing needs and emergencies that we have to face. And we can only be better prepared and improve the quality of our response if we always keep in mind the ultimate goal of localization, which is the preferential option for the poor and for the most marginalized. So I think that this is the key message that I really want to offer as a conclusion, and to continue, obviously, the reflection within the Caritas Confederation. And then just for you to know that, obviously, recommendations and challenges and good practices which were shared today will be contributing to the draft roadmap that we are putting together within the CI Humanitarian Policy Task Force. We have also already collected additional inputs and recommendations from other regions on the localization approach within the Caritas Confederation. So just for you to know that conclusions and the discussion, today's discussion, will obviously contribute to this draft roadmap that we are putting together.
Thank you, Thoriana. Thank you for boiling down all those rich experiences into this very concise, But the word you mentioned, each word by word, is very, very rich, I would say. like focusing on the people, people-centered, trust building, working alongside with the other faith-based organization. And last not the least, I like the most is option for the poor, I think, which is the reason that why we are here on this localization agenda. So thank you so much, Floriana. So I think we are going to the very last and closing sessions in which Caritas Asia, localization and safeguarding working group and chairperson, who is also the representative of the Caritas Asia regional commission members. I would like to invite Father Antonio to make a closing remark for this localization webinar for Caritas Region. Father Antonio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doc Richard. Good evening, everyone. I'd like also to take this opportunity to greet you. Happy Easter. Yes, this regional webinar on localization is a great opportunity for us to share with one another our experiences, on how localization is happening in our respective areas. So I'd like to thank our organizers, especially the Regional Commission of Asia, led by our President, Doc Alo, and then Ari and Zar. Of course, Doc Richard is there. Thank you very much. All our moderators and speakers, sharers in today's webinar. Would like also to acknowledge the presence of our Secretary General Aloysius and his partners in Caritas Internationalis. Thank you very much for helping us to make this webinar a success. Yes, it is really important that we continue to deepen and our understanding and knowledge on localization. And this is also an opportunity for us to enrich and strengthen our strategies to be more responsive and effective in our services to the poor. That's the end of the day. That's the measure of our effectivity in terms of making localization as a strategy. Local institutions and organizations, I feel that's really very important in responding to the needs of the poor. I realize that the poor at the end of the day should also be empowered. That's one of the sharings that we have today. The poor should be liberated. It should not remain marginalized. Hopefully, our local localization strategies can help them not only to become objects of our services, but also eventually become providers of those services to our vulnerable communities. And of course, this kind of strengthening, developing our local organizations will make our people more capable and resilient in managing different risks that face them every year, especially in Asia. We are vulnerable with different kinds of disasters. And of course, this localization is also an opportunity, as you were saying, for our enriching our partnership, developing, building, and strengthening our partnership. That's the only way to face the struggle of many disasters that we face. So again, thank you very much. Let us continue to share our experience, best practices, experiences, because this is the only way to learn, the only to improve, and at the end, to learn how to be more effective in our service to the poor. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Thank you, Father Antonio. On behalf of the Caritas Asia, Thank you so much for making this closing remark and encouraging us to keep continuing walk the journey to serve the poor, option for the poor, and to serve the journey as a Caritas Asia members. So I'd like to hand it over floor to Zara Gomez, the regional coordinator of Caritas Asia, to conclude the session.
Thank you, Dr. Richard, and thank you everyone once again for your participation to this important webinar. Maybe to conclude, I'll just invite you again to join us in our next webinar, which will be on the Together We campaign. This is scheduled on May 30, originally scheduled on May 10, but we have already moved it to May 31st, the 31st of May. So you are all again invited to join us in this another important webinar for our region. So once again, I convey to you, everyone, thank you very much and happy Easter. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the speakers, all the organizers, and all the participants.
Thank you very much.
Dr.
We keep in
Richard,
touch.
thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone, take care.
Thank you.